What are the jobs of the future going to look like?
Well, the reality is we have no idea, which is why it is imperative that education teaches students how to pivot. It's something I talk about so much that I'm writing a book on it called Pivot, because that is the skill of the future. The director of Lab on Aging at the Harvard Medical School says that the first person to live to 150 has already been born. So if we are to prepare students for 100 years of productive life when we don't really know how that future is going to unfold with artificial intelligence and globalization and technology, we have to teach them how to take their skill set, whatever that skill set may be, and transfer it. And that comes down to a lot of the soft skills that we hear people talking about, social skills, networking skills, and the ability to create opportunities when none seem to be apparent, entrepreneurial skills.
You look at the history books and you see the Industrial Revolution, and then you see it giving way to the age of the machine. And now we're looking at AI and how much it's doing for us, but how do we find ways to stay productive and stay in the workforce while automated bots are taking care of so much?
Right. How do we keep the human element in this? And I think that's what's one of the good things that we're seeing is, while we are moving into such a technologically based society, we are starting to see some shifts in the human relations as well. I mean, people are the phone may never come back as a telephone, but people are looking for more face-to-face contact. And that's what, things like video conferencing allows. And I think people are going to want to get together and have face-to-face conferences as well. So what we're seeing so far is that the biggest uptick now in the job market is actually in the nonprofit sector. It's the fastest growing. So what that also demonstrates is that people are going for that more human relations, socially conscious types of jobs. And I think we'll see that in really three critical areas for the future, which is renewable energy, network neutrality, and the democratization and distribution of knowledge. And all those three go along.
Well, let's take those apart. Each one, what does it mean?
Well, renewable energy certainly means, taking advantage of the resources that just keep on giving. And, no matter what side of the argument you fall on this, it's hard to deny that mining and refining a fuel takes a lot more ongoing effort than using something like the sun or the wind that keeps coming to us. So as we enter into like a sharing economy, which is what we already are in ever since the age of the internet, we're going to see that the industries of the future are the ones that have these zero marginal costs. They may have upfront costs, but they don't have ongoing costs because the resources just keep on giving. And that's where I think we see renewable energy becoming one of those elements that are absolutely critical. And when we talk about bringing millennials into the workforce, these are the kinds of things that interest them because it gives them purpose, and purpose is more important to this generation than profit. And network neutrality is really the only way that we create equity in the world and lift people out of poverty, is to make sure that everybody has access. So that's going to be a critical social oriented job of the future as well. And then finally, the democratization of knowledge, well, that goes with network neutrality, because knowledge then can be distributed to everyone. And education then has to adapt, because education as an institution as we know it no longer becomes the deliverer of knowledge, because knowledge is all in the palm of our hands and our smartphones. But it does become the institution that helps us triangulate that data so that we can be critical thinkers, and use that knowledge, as a force for good.
All right. Now, as companies plan for the future, in order to keep the workforce not only up to date, but to make sure that they have a workforce in the future, what can they do to help with the continuing education of the people they already have and to supplement what's going on in academic circles to make sure they're getting the workers they need?
Right. Well, I work as a keynote speaker, and I speak to a lot of corporations, and also to a lot of educational institutions, because it is that trajectory that has to have continuity in order to help the companies. And honestly, what I think is going to happen based on what companies are talking about in terms of the quality of candidates that they have for their jobs coming out of four-year colleges, I think that might be a thing of the past. I think a lot of companies are going to start recruiting basically right out of high school, but then using the community college network as the workforce development arena in order to help shape those students to be really quality employees that are well focused and doing, exactly what that company needs. And then on top of that, the companies themselves have to pivot. They have to recognize that CSR, corporate social responsibility, is not just something to pay lip service to. It actually has to become the fundamental backbone of the purpose of the company, because that's what this new generation of employees is looking for, is those companies that are really committed to purpose. And in a sharing economy and in an economy dominated by technology, actually that purpose starts to become very relevant and starts to become really the foundation of profit.
Talk to a 12 or 13-year-old boy or girl and their families, and what do they need to think about as they get into high school, aim either for trade or for college or for right into the workforce? What do they need to focus on?
Well, when I do talk to kids, I always try to visit with kids in schools when I'm speaking for even leadership and parents, is that I talk to them about this, that the most important thing is to be a lifelong learner and to recognize that everything that you're doing in school, whether or not it seems like it has any kind of relevance to what you might do in the future, these are exercises in learning. And you have to look at it that way, that the more you can learn about things that you don't know, it means that the better opportunities you have in the future to learn about the things that you want to learn about, and to constantly make sure that you are relevant and to pivot. So lifelong learning is absolutely the key, and this is the most important thing that school can provide to us.